All right, we are live. Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. We are back for our summer masterclass series. And thank you for your patience last week. Yes, I know the video was a little choppy, but we have got a better version of last week's up on YouTube. And I did share the link in the comment section of last week's video. So if you tried to tune into last week's video and it was just glitching and pausing because I was at a different location and combination of Wi-Fi and my laptop, just wasn't having it. So the better version is available to you now. So you can go ahead and go and check this out. But we are back in our home environment and internet is good. And I have not a new mouse, but I have an old mouse that I'm now using on this computer because sometimes I have problems. And that's what we do. So today's mini masterclass is getting to know our body type, and we want to learn it from, again, always coming from the perspective of, what does this tell me? What does this tell me about where I'm at? What's going on underneath the hood? And what are the things I need to focus on, right? It doesn't matter what your neighbor next door, what their body type is and the things that are important for them to focus on moving forward as they're on a journey to health. But like, what is really going on with me? Like, let's take honest evaluation. And that's what we're going to do here today, is be like, hey, where am I? Where do I fit in this? What are the influencing factors of my symptoms, how I'm feeling on a day-to-day basis, my energy, where I'm depositing weight, and what's going to be most important for me moving forward? Because without knowing and having clarity around your body type, we're missing an area of opportunity. So there's 4 main body types. And for the interest of today and the sake of time, I'm going to focus on the first 3. We're not going to focus on D that you see in this picture, and I'm going to break all of those down today. So we're going to focus on the top 3 because those are the most prevalent ones that have to deal with hormones, as you're going to find out, which is, as women, this is really what's going under the hood. Why is this important? Well, this is really important because without knowing your body type, you'll be wasting time, money, and effort, and you'll eventually give up. If you're on a quest, whether it's to lose weight, to get better sleep, to get your anxiety under control, to get your cravings under control, if you choose a plan that's meant to work for a different set of circumstances, you might be trying the plan and getting frustrated. That's not doing anything for you, right? But it wasn't the right plan for you. So this is why we need to learn and know. It's like, okay, where am I at? What are things I haven't considered before? What are the things that no one told me that this is influencing where I'm at, so that we can move forward smartly with great awareness and intention. So the first body type, and if we go back to the body types here, is this one here. So this one that we're going to talk about first is the adrenal body type. So the adrenals are our little triangle shaped glands that sit on top of our kidneys. They are critical in the HPA axis. Hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal glands. You hear me talk about that over and over again. That is our mainframe. That is our main control center of hormones and everything else in our body. So the adrenal body type, why we're focusing on it, is when that HPA axis is sending messages to the adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands are making a lot of cortisol, which we know of as our main stress hormone. It has an effect on everything else in our body. The same blood goes everywhere, the same hormones go. Some of them are compartmentalized, but they basically go everywhere. So if we have the adrenal glands kicking out more cortisol than maybe would be ideal, that's going to show up in different places of our body. So when we look at that body type, this is where we tend to gather more weight around that low belly area. So the low belly area has a lot of cortisol receptors. And so depending on what hormones are more prevalent in your body will dictate where your body stores fat, right? That's really what we're talking about, right? It's like, why does my body store fat here or here? It's hormone related. So signs that you might have an adrenal body type. So you might look at this picture and go, oh yeah, that is my shape. If that is, you might just know by that picture, like, oh, yep, that's my shape. Okay, this is something I need to think about. But here's some symptoms that people often have, and hopefully you don't have all of them, but this is symptoms people often have if they're presenting with this adrenal body type. And that tells me as a practitioner, I need to really focus on this person's adrenals. I need to focus on cortisol. I need to focus on their stress. and that whole HPA axis. So fatigue, insomnia, red cheeks, anxiety, weak or brittle bones, moon or round face, the pendulous abdomen. So that refers to the abdomen that's like hanging over, acne or poor skin, salt, cheese, chocolate, or sugar cravings, specifically later in the day, needing coffee to wake up, having dark circles under the eyes, inflammation or pain in the joints, back and neck, heel spurs, fibromyalgia, pitting edema. So that means if you have swelling, especially, you'll usually notice it in the lower legs, ankles, feet, where if you're swollen and you push your skin, it stays in. That's called pitting edema. So your body is carrying extra fluid and it's not clearing that extra fluid. If you're out of breath when you climb stairs, an overactive immune system, which we often see as more prevalent to allergies and chemical sensitivities, autoimmune conditions, moodiness and irritability, brain fog, and a buffalo hump. So like often people will have like a little bit of a hump on the back, and which is like a fat deposit, right? So again, this is like, it's like, why is it weird that my body's storing fat tissue there? It's hormone related. So I usually say it's like, if you have like 5 or more, if you can check off 5 or more of those, you might not have the outward presentation of this body type, because we're all going to have individual differences. But if you have 5 or more of those, if you can give checks to 5 or more of those, that's something you want to consider. Oh, okay. Is how I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing on a day-to-day basis, what is a contributing factor? So cortisol and stress, this is what we're talking about in this body type. So cortisol is our main stress hormone. Our adrenals produce other hormones as well, but to keep things narrow, we'll talk about cortisol today. So normally cortisol should rise for us in the morning. It's our get up and go hormone, right? So it should rise for us in the morning, so we have the energy to get up and go. And then it should be lower during the day. And then closer to bedtime, it should be like almost, it's never zero, but it should be very, very low. Because on the flip side of that is melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. It should be an opposite pattern. It should be low in the morning so we can get up and go. And it should be highest right before bed and in the first few hours of sleep. So that's what should be happening with our with cortisol and one of our hormones. Lots of things can happen to throw cortisol off its natural rhythm. Chronic stress, medications, the food we eat, blood sugar imbalances. And what can often happen is that typically what happened under times of a lot of stress, first acute and then chronic stress, is that cortisol might be higher than it should be, and especially later in the evening. So if you're someone who in the evening, like can't go to bed, like your body's keyed up or jittery, that's telling me like, is your cortisol too high later at night? And then often what will happen sometimes over years of cortisol being higher than ideal, the adrenal glands just kind of tap out. Like they never really stop working, but they just stop paying attention to what should be happening. Because they're like, dude, I'm tired. We have been running with the high cortisol. We've been running on fight or flight for years. I'm done. And then what happens is women and men have a hard time getting up in the morning, right? If you're just like, if you get up and it takes hours for you to be functional, right? I got to do this. I got to take coffee. I got to about noon, maybe my brain is awake. There's always something else involved as well. Inflammation, were you sleeping? But if your cortisol is not great during the day, I know usually your melatonin pattern is going to be off as well. So you're probably not sleeping as well. So if if cortisol is like lower especially during that morning, inflammation, people with chronic pain often feel worse in the morning because their cortisol has been lower while they're sleeping. So that's a natural physiological response. And that's why it's like, okay, after I'm up and I'm getting moving for a while, they start to feel a little better, is because cortisol is naturally, now that we're awake and the sun is up and hopefully we've looked at the sunlight, our cortisol is rising, and cortisol balances blood sugar and also keeps inflammation in check. So with all of that information, just again, today, where it's just like, okay, where am I at? What are the things that I need to focus on? Cortisol, melatonin, adrenal body type, what is going on under the hood? So if we can identify ourselves as having an adrenal body type, or if we look at these checks and we can check a bunch off, what we know is that we're running on stress hormones. And when we're running on stress hormones, often our body's getting the signal that we're in fight or flight. We're in stress mode. That is breakdown mode. We're either running on stress hormones or we're running on sex hormones. We want to be in rest and digest for our body to heal, recover, and repair. And if we're not in that state, not just physically sleeping, but if we're not hormonally in that state, if we're not, our nervous system doesn't match that state, we are going to continue to not feel well. People often, circadian rhythm can be disrupted when under the chronic stress with the adrenal body type, having unstable energy, sometimes unstable, but also unpredictable, right? Sometimes short bursts of energy, like we can muster up a little bit of energy to go do something and then we crash after. Or where we wake up and we're like, am I going to have energy to do anything today? I don't know. Like I won't make plans for Saturday because I just don't know how I'm going to feel in the morning. So we can have very unstable energy. It might be great in the morning. You might know that a certain time in the afternoon or late evening, forget it, 8 o'clock, you're falling asleep on the couch. Ask yourself this question if you can identify yourself with this body type is, are you doing too much? Take an honest inventory and assessment. Are you doing too much? I usually focus on people, what do we need to do to spend more time in rest and digest? So this goes back to, without knowing your body type, you'll be wasting effort because sometimes we think we need to do more, then we over-exercise. And if you're already in an adrenal body type, if you're over-exercising, it's actually going to make the problem worse. So you're putting a lot of effort into something, you're not getting a result, you think it's not working, and it might actually be making your hormonal situation worse, which is why it's so important that I'm glad you're tuning in, that you get to know what your body type is. The next body type we are going to talk about is the estrogen body type. Let me see if I can see if there's any comments coming in. I can't see. Hey guys, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Okay, cool. I can see we're up. Amazing. So the estrogen, the ovarian body type. And if we look at the picture here, this is our classic pear shape, right? So we know some of us have a more pear shape. And what does that mean? That means that that woman, based on hormones, carries more of their weight distribution around their hips, buttocks, and thighs. So again, the hormones will dictate if your body's going to put on adipose tissue, if your body is going to store things as fat on your body, your hormones will influence where that's going to be stored. So if you can identify yourself as having this type of body type, this pear body type, and again, this is never about judgment. It's like you'll know whether that's true or not. And we all have seen that picture of like, oh yes, this is the pear shape. This is the apple shape. Well, this is why it's valuable to know what it is. And so we can recognize it in ourselves. So we call it an ovarian body type. And often when you'll see this, you'll hear things of like estrogen dominance. You'll hear estrogen being talked a lot about, which absolutely, obviously estrogen is involved in this, but it's more than just estrogen. And so if we look at the ovaries, our ovaries, yes, are critical for estrogen, but also testosterone, also progesterone. So a lot of these symptoms that I'm going to cover here on the checklist for this one have more than just estrogen into play, right? So estrogen doesn't act on its own. Any of our sex hormones don't act in its own. Progesterone, testosterone, very important as part of that full picture. So if we know we have this body type, we want to look at, okay, what is going on mostly like with our sex hormones. So for someone who has the weight gain around the hips, the thighs, and the buttocks, a history of PMS, ovarian cysts, right? So this is a big one with the ovaries and testosterone, because pretty much there's a couple different types of PCOS, but if you know you have PCOS, more than likely testosterone is higher than an ideal. You have a higher androgen expression, and that will affect all kinds of other things, right? There's more than just the body shape in that category. If you have cyclic fatigue, right, especially if you notice with your menstrual cycle, if you're cycling regularly or not, if you know, okay, this time of the month, this time in my cycle, I have more energy or I have less energy. Cyclic brain fog, right? I'll add cyclic migraines to that, hormonal migraines, cyclic knee pain, lower back pain, lack of libido. That's telling us is like, okay, what the heck are my hormones doing, right? Are they too low? Are they too high? What is interfering? What is contributing to that hormone pattern in me, right? So that tells us either we're potentially having really large swings throughout the month, why we're feeling things, especially at certain times in our cycle. We have hot flashes, we have night sweats, vaginal dryness, cyclic acne, cyclic mood swings. So even cyclic acne, it will tell us as a practitioner, as a functional practitioner, if you have more acne around ovulation time or just before your cycle, that will tell us different information of like even when in your cycle you have cyclic acne, right? Because different hormones are more prevalent. Around ovulation, testosterone is higher. We get a surge of testosterone around ovulation time, which is why we tend to have a little bit of burst of energy. You usually have the most energy around ovulation time if all is going well, right? If you have more acne around, that last little phase before your period starts, right? That's the estrogen really coming into play. So if you have excessive menstrual bleeding, and that's usually the balance between estrogen and progesterone. Cyclic constipation, yes, your hormones affect your bowel movements. And if you have cyclic thinning of the hair, if you notice like sometimes your like hair is falling out, but not all the time, this is where we're looking at. We're looking at like what is going on with your sex hormones. And for the lack of a better term is like, we're looking at the ovaries, because if someone premenopausal, that's where most of the hormones are coming from. And then after menopause, the adrenals really kicked in, right? So this is why sometimes like this adrenal body type, maybe it was never really a thing and it started popping up around perimenopause, menopause, is because the adrenals take an extra load after menopause, because your ovaries are basically like, we're done. We're not making all these other hormones, but your body still needs them. Your body's still making testosterone. Your body's still making estrogen, much lower levels. And a lot of that is now then shifted to your adrenal glands. So it's helpful to know where things are coming into play. Insulin is huge, especially in this ovarian body type, because using PCOS as an example, most people with PCOS have higher than normal androgen levels and almost always have insulin resistance. And so typically that means they have higher levels of insulin in their body than what we would like to see. And what does higher levels of insulin produce? It produces weight gain. It's an influence on high blood pressure, high cholesterol, mood changes, cancer and aging, hormone imbalances, low libido, aches and pains. So knowing how this influences insulin, which is a hormone, right? We think of it just to it regulates blood sugar. It's a hormone. So guess what? It interplays with so many other things in our body. So if we know we have this type of body type, we need to get really serious about blood sugar control and about insulin levels, because that will help us make sure that we're focused on the most important things for you. The last body type I'm going to cover today, again, these are mini master classes, right? So these are meant to be, 20 to 30 minute little mini master classes. So there's always way more than I can give you in 20, 30 minutes, but I just want to give you that insight, and you're going to be able, I know so many of you right now are looking going, ooh, yeah, okay, I've got a bunch of these. That gives you some guidance, right? So it gives you some guidance that you know what to focus on going forward. So the thyroid body type. So this thyroid body type is where someone tends to carry excess weight evenly throughout the body. We saw in the other two body types, there was areas that were more prominent. The thyroid is kind of like all over, okay? And if the thyroid is, and it's not always that there's anything wrong with the thyroid, okay? Let me just get that one out there. It's often that there's not anything wrong with the thyroid per se. The thyroid is responding to everything else that's going on in the body. The thyroid responds to what's happening from the adrenal glands. The thyroid responds to what's happening in the ovaries and the hormones the ovaries are producing or not producing. The thyroid responds to the inflammation in our body and what we're eating and if we're sleeping and if we're stressed. So the thyroid gets a lot of attention, rightly so, because it's a very common issue for so many people. But the thyroid itself has to deal with a lot of crap. So if we can change the messaging and the environment of the thyroid, we can change the function of it. Absolutely. So signs that thyroid needs some attention. And again, if you look at these, if you're checking off, I know there will be many of you watching this who'd be like, yeah, I check off like a lot of these. All right, we need to look at the thyroid. What do we need to do to support that thyroid? That whole HPA axis, and that downstreams to the thyroid as well. Fatigue. Generalized unexplained weight gain, right? So that's just the general weight gain, not one specific spot or another. And it's often unexplained because you're like, I'm eating the same thing. I exercise the same way, like nothing's really changed. It's unexplained, right? If you know, like, oh, I went on vacation, I ate that, we know the reason for that weight gain, right? So if it's unexplained, this could be this is where we need to look. Cold intolerance, brittle nails, stiff, dry hair, puffiness around the eyes, poor short-term memory and focus, brain fog, depression, dry skin, cravings for bread, pasta, sweets, high cholesterol, loss of libido, dry, cracked heels, lowered motivation, constipation. This is a huge red flag. Thinning outer eyebrows. So like the third of the eyebrows, if they're really, really thin, that's a thyroid sign. Enlargement of the thyroid. So in an effort that the thyroid's like, it's trying to kick out more thyroid hormone. So the tissue itself will actually get bigger to try to make more thyroid hormone, because your body is always trying to keep you alive. It's trying its best to keep in balance, but it has a really hard job to do. So because it's working really hard, it will get larger. Hoarseness of the voice, because as that thyroid gets larger, it will often push back. And then I'll often, people, if they have pain in swallowing, or if they tell me I can't swallow pills or I can't swallow large bites of food, I'm like, okay, what's up with your thyroid, right? Because if any swelling, your thyroid's right here, right? So any swelling in the thyroid is going to impact your voice, your throat, all of that. Morning headache that gets better as the day goes on. And if you have a hard time starting and completing tasks. So if you look at that list and you can check a bunch off, we need to be looking at your thyroid. Is it my thyroid influencing where I'm at right now? Thyroid, I mentioned it talks about fatigue and talks about hunger and unexplained weight gain. There's a lot of other hormones that it influences as well. So ghrelin and leptin are our hunger hormones. Ghrelin is the one that tells you, hey, I'm hungry, you need to eat. Leptin is the one that says you've had enough food and shuts off your drive for food. And if we're not sleeping well and we're fatigued, it will affect these hormones. So if we don't have enough sleep, we will have lower levels of leptin, meaning we won't be satisfied with the food we eat, and we're going to keep looking for food. So even after we've eaten dinner, we're still looking for food. We can't shut it off. Often that's due to low leptin levels. And one thing that's in our control most of the time, not when cats are making noises and wake you up in the middle of the night, but most of the time is not enough sleep, right? So if we know this is an issue hormonally, we can make sure that we're supporting the body the best way it can. Hi, Luna. Thank you. Yes, everyone can hear you right now. Hi. Luna says hi. She wanted to say hi today. So how do you know? How do you know what your body type is? So if you've watched this and you've gone through the three, you're like, okay, I've got a couple that might stand out to you predominantly, and this is where it gets more, it's just, the reality is a lot of times there will be an overlap. You're like, oh my goodness, I have a lot of these, a lot of these, a lot of these. Yes, because in the short masterclass, you've probably seen how they all go together. All the hormones influence everything else. So how you know your body type, if you want to know, like, okay, Natalie, I want to know what is my body type, which system is the one that is influencing how I'm feeling, whether I'm getting results or not, where the things I know I need to focus on in my health, where is that coming from? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to invite you to fill out my nutritional assessment questionnaire. So this form, I've got it in digital form for you. And by filling this form out, it's going to help us figure out what is your body type. So when you fill this form out, it'll give us a graph like this. This is not your graph, hopefully. It's, I don't say ever there's better or worse, but it tells us information. It tells us what is going on. And so based on your responses to this questionnaire, we get a graph, and then we can see, all right, what are the systems affecting you? What part of the body do we need to focus, right? Is it the adrenals, the pituitary, the thyroid, the female reproductive, which is like the estrogen symptoms, right? Which is the one that's high priority, right? So in this person's, the adrenal was a more of a high priority item for than the estrogen and then the female reproductive hormones, right? So anything high priority, we know, okay, these are things that need your attention, right? If you think, oh, it's my low thyroid, and you're putting all your energy, effort, and attention to focusing on a low thyroid, but that wasn't the main problem, then you're not going to have the results that you expected. So I want you to be able to avoid that. So I would love for you to fill out the form. If you've not filled out this nutritional assessment form before, what you can do is you can scan this QR code or put this link in, and it is going to take you to the online spot where you fill out this form. And then I'll get in touch with you. I'll email you back. I'll email you back your graph of what it looks like. And then we can have a discussion of what's going on, what are the most important things for you to focus on, and we'll know the main symptoms that are affecting you, how you're feeling, and what do you need to go moving forward. Because what I don't want you to do is follow good information that doesn't apply to you. There's a lot of really great information, but if it doesn't apply to you in your situation, then it's really not going to be worth your time, energy, or effort, right? It doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just means it is not the right thing for you. So that's my mini masterclass for today, is know your body type. I covered the top 3 body types that I see influencing women and a few key nuggets that you want to focus on going forward. I hope you take the opportunity to go ahead and fill out that nutritional assessment form so we can see what is your body type. It's really empowering. That's the first step, is like being empowered and knowing and having that good information for you. So any questions for this? I know so many people are going to be watching the replay. So any questions, go ahead and put it in the comments below, and I'll get back to your good questions at another time. So thanks for tuning in. Next week, wait, what are we talking about next week? Next week is, very popular question. Next week's is, are all carbs bad? So tune in next week. And I know many of you don't join live because I'm going live in the middle of the day. This is why it always stays up in the Facebook group. And I'm now putting these videos up on YouTube as well, so you can get back to them when it works for you. So you got today's video, which is amazing. Make sure you tune in next week for Are All Carbs Bad? Take care, everybody.